welcome to Hello, everybody. Welcome to Prosperity Now's webinar today, which is about telling the story of good jobs, conversations that drive change. And I am Joelle Hughley. I'm the Associate Director of our Community Impact Work, leading our initiative around good job quality. And I want to tell you a little bit about that before we get started. So one of the reasons that we're doing this webinar and this initiative is we believe that job quality and having a good job equals access and opportunity. And we believe that learning how to talk about it and using small businesses as an opportunity and strategy to create good jobs is something that we are supporting and working toward. And we would like to optimize that and share with you some of the insights that we've gathered through our partnership, through the initiatives and um, cohorts that we have put together to work towards creating job quality overall. So with that, we welcome you today to drink your coffee, get some tea, and I will pass it over to my friend Olivia to onboard everybody and get started with today's webinar.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you so much, Joelle, for kicking us off. We're really excited to have you here today for telling the story of good jobs and conversations that drive change. You're definitely in for some great content today. I had such an amazing time just planning and putting this webinar together, so I'm excited to see it all come together and for you all to continue to engage the speakers on today's webinar. So again, my name is Olivia Harp, and I'm the Program Manager for Network Building here at Prosperity Now. I'm here to just get you comfortable and settled on the platform so that you can be as active as a participant as you can for today's learning opportunity. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be available via YouTube in the coming weeks. We've switched to Zoom, so if you need any help, you have a helpful link if you have any technical difficulties throughout today's learning opportunity. And you can also email us at zoomwebinar@prosperitynow.org to ask us direct questions about any glitches that you run into while operating on today's platform. You are all muted to ensure sound quality, but we want you to use that questions box to just share your reflections and pose questions to the speakers as we move through today's presentations. And again, just like Joelle said, we want you to get the most out of today's call. So grab a snack, coffee, get cozy in a quiet place and get ready to engage us. We want you to, again, use that questions box to send us questions and comments as you listen in. We want to hear everything and all of the reflections that you have throughout today's learning opportunity. And also, throughout the process, we want you to reflect on ways to apply what you learned today to your own work. Everything we do at Prosperity Now, we want to ensure that you feel comfortable implementing it in your everyday roles. And so we want you to envision a lot of these best practices and tips in motion for every day. And so Prosperity Now's mission is to inspire bold action and provide organizations with the tools, research, and resources needed to help people build prosperity so everyone can thrive. And so I am going to scoot to the side and make way for your wonderful moderator today, Corrine Stewart, who is the Program Manager for Community Impact.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so excited to have two speakers today. I'm going to introduce the first one, who is Sarah Rahim, and she is the program manager from SHRM Foundation. Oh, and I forgot to state that I'm Corrine Stewart, and I'm with Prosperity Now as a program manager, and I work with Joelle Hughley on the Good Jobs initiatives. This is the voice that you heard in the beginning. And so again, Sarah Rahim from SHRM Foundation, she's the program manager. A little bit about Sarah is she oversees the Thriving Together portfolio, focused on creating supportive workplace conditions where employers and employees can thrive. Her team equips HR and employees with the skills and resources to create mentally healthy workplaces and provide quality jobs. She is an expert in driving broad coalition-based social impact, having designed and led initiatives focused on ensuring universal access to health supports, workforce development opportunities, and supportive work environments for the past 10 years. In her previous role with Interfaith America, Rahim spearheaded programs that positively engage a full religious spectrum at the intersection of business and healthcare. Prior to that, she worked at Cara Collective, where she trained over 50 national nonprofits and social enterprises on workforce development best practices, helping them achieve greater reach, job placement, and retention outcomes. She also holds a master's of public policy from the University of Chicago. And then second, we have our second speaker, which is Margie Waller. She's a senior fellow from Tapos Partnership, a researcher and a writer on Quality Jobs Report. Margie is a senior fellow at Tapos Partnership and an advisor to national organizations and foundations. Previously, she was a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institution with a joint appointment in the Economic Studies and Metropolitan Policy programs. Prior to booking, she was senior advisor on domestic policy in the Clinton-Gore White House. Before joining the administration, Margie was a senior fellow for social policy and director of the Working Families Project at the Progressive Policy Institute. She also served as Director of Public Policy at United Way of America and Director of Public Policy at Public-Private Ventures in Philadelphia. She is a frequent keynote speaker at conferences and workshops presenting research findings for communicating to build broad support for policy goals. Margie holds a Bachelor of Science in Communication Studies from Northwestern University and a JD from the Ohio State University. So let's welcome our two speakers as they come on aboard and tell you more about their initiatives. So Sarah and Margie, if you can just, great, thank you. And go ahead and introduce your initiative.
Great. Hi, everyone. Just confirming that you can see screen. If not, I'm going to ask Olivia to share it over again. Great to meet
Yes,
you
we
all.
can see the screen.
Great. Okay. I am unable to see screen if the slides are showing. My apologies.
Yes, maybe it popped up on another tab because that happens sometimes.
Oh, 1 minute. If it's all right, we'll stop sharing and we'll start again. Thanks, Olivia. I can see screen now. Great.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Happy to jump in. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So as shared, my name is Sarah Rahim, and I'm a program manager at SHRM Foundation. I'm very excited to be joining you all today to share a bit more about our work and the research that we have recently conducted on quality jobs. So I'll take a couple minutes to talk through SHRM and our Thriving Together portfolio. And then I'm excited to pass it off to my colleague Margie from Topos, who will do a deeper dive into the actual research and recommendations for how to talk about quality jobs. So at a high level, SHRM stands for the Society for Human Resource Management, and we are the world's largest HR association. The foundation is the nonprofit arm of SHRM, founded in 1969. So our mission is to elevate HR as a force for social good, to really create a workplace where both employers and workers can thrive. So I like to say that what's unique is that we bring employers to the table. We have over 340,000 members across 180 countries. We represent small, medium, and large companies across rural, urban, and suburban settings with over 500 chapters. So I'll move us to the next slide, or I might ask Olivia to do that since I'm not sure if I have control here. Great. So here is an overview of our 3 interconnected pools of work. We impact talent in workplaces through research, leadership coalitions, and peer support. So when we think about the journey of the job seeker, we are first focused on widening our pathway to work, right? Thinking about sourcing and hiring. We know that 2 out of 3 working Americans do not have a 4-year degree. And that's really where we push employers for a skills-first approach, as well as accessing untapped pools of talent. So that includes the military community, those who are differently abled, as well as opportunity youth and those who are just as involved. So after that, our strengthening HR field focuses on current and prospective HR professionals to really find opportunity and growth. We offer scholarships, awards, mentorship, and an HR apprenticeship. And finally, on the right side, we have our Thriving Together portfolio. So the focus here is, once we get job seekers into jobs, we want to be able to support employers so that they can make sure their employees can prosper and thrive. So I'll share a bit more on the next slide. So currently, what we know is that companies with higher employee well-being scores tend to have higher ROIs and profitability, right? So mentally healthy workplaces correlates with increased productivity, creativity, and just improved recruitment and retention rates. So there really is a business and social case to invest in thriving at work. And we'll define that a bit more on the next slide. Great. So our Thriving Together portfolio is focused on creating supportive conditions. And the end outcome is really improved mental health and well-being. But when we think about what employees need to thrive at work, there's a few key components. There's hard skills, transferable skills, and growth potential. So all of that is influenced by what we define as the social drivers of health, right? Which include basic security, stability, and the focus of today is job quality, right? Because when employees are facing wraparound challenges that negatively impact them, then they are less likely to perform well in other areas. So the ability to really upskill and have access to a quality job and purpose, it's a really important social driver of health and the focus of our research. Move to the next. So you'll see some stats here just in terms of the current state of the workforce, right? So right now we know that the current workforce is struggling with elevated rates of every challenge, anxiety, stress, and burnout. 77% experience work-related stress on a daily basis. And 3 out of 4 working professionals are also caregivers. So we're referring to those who are both dealing with childcare and elderly care, which is a barrier. So again, there's a financial cost to employees who are disengaged and not thriving, as well as for the employer. And what our research currently shows is that the workplace is generally not set up to support those cultures of care, which are so needed. Move on to the next slide. So the 2024 Edelman Trust Barometer reveals a significant global decline in trust towards key institutions, such as government, nonprofits, and media. But one place that we noticed where trust is not falling apart, right? The trust in the employer and businesses. So employers are seen as trustworthy, and the expectation to address some of those barriers that I mentioned is there. We're also seeing, particularly with younger generations, right? Employees are really expressing the importance of working where someone cares about their well-being, and that's an opportunity for employers to lean into. And what we've also seen currently is that employers are trying to create these supportive workplace conditions for employees to thrive, but they aren't always successful, right? Many workplace well-being programs fail because they focus on maybe individual behavior rather than addressing the root causes like workload and leadership. And employees often view initiatives as maybe insincere if a company is maintaining a toxic culture while it's trying to promote wellness. So what we're really focusing on is leadership behavior and supportive organizational design, which are really crucial for fostering genuine well-being. At a high level, again, here are some stats that really show the business benefit of focusing on creating supportive workplace conditions. We'll move to the next slide, which if you zoom out a little bit, there's one more click. Yeah, there we go. So the big picture here, right, is that mentally healthy workplaces is the end outcome. SHRM Foundation is addressing that through a few key pathways. We're addressing the social drivers of health, which includes access to quality jobs, which we'll hear about in just a bit, supporting working caregivers, and just providing access to creating cultures of care. So I'm going to move us to the next slide just to end up our final thought here. These are a few mechanisms with which we engage employers and our HR member network. So you'll see there's research, convening and coalition building, and knowledge activation. So my final thought before I pass it off to Margie is really, SHRM Foundation is interested in creating the conditions where an employer can affect change in a strategic way, whether it's a small to medium to large business. And right now, we are seeing an agreement to action gap, right, when it comes to providing access to quality jobs. So employers are on board, but they aren't always taking the steps to do so. So one aspect of this, which is really crucial, is having the right language that's going to allow more employers to feel like adopting a quality job, it's attainable, that it's pro-business, and that it's not a real risk in the current context and climate of the workforce. So the framing science research is really a crucial strategy for us. We recently commissioned a similar study around skills first hiring and advancement, and it was super helpful. So I'm excited to now pause and pass it over to Margie, who will start with a few quick polls just to gauge more from the audience.
Sorry, do you want me to move this forward now?
Yes, we might need Olivia's help here if it's unable to share.
It says I should be able to, but I can't. So maybe, yeah,
We'll need Olivia's help with that.
yeah. Sorry, Sarah, did you want to share the questions that we had for folks in the polling?
Absolutely. Are you able to launch them, Olivia? Let me take a look. Perfect. Okay, she was able to launch them.
Great. I don't know that. So what we're looking for here is just your ideas, and there's no wrong answer. What do you think of as a characteristic of a good job or a quality job? Maybe just even from your own experience. Folks, I actually don't know whether I'll be able to see the answers.
I think, yeah,
Like
are we able to see responses if we end the poll?
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just go ahead and stop and share the results.
Great.
Looks like here we have employer paid health insurance and career advancement opportunities. A place where employees and culture of the workplace is open, welcoming, and invites growth. I think that is everything that we have here. And I will just say, yes, these are some of the kinds of things we heard doing the research as well. So maybe we can move on.
Yes, feel free to go ahead and move on.
I'm trying to move us to polling question number 2. I'm going to launch that. So hopefully everyone can see. What barriers do you face when discussing quality jobs to decision makers in your organization or company? So we're really thinking about what challenges folks currently face when you're thinking about how to approach the conversation about quality jobs and where to start. Take another 30 seconds, and then we will also ask the team to share responses. Great. Okay. I will now end poll and then share results. So we're seeing cost, budgets, staff capacity, skill set, and where benefits fit into the equation. Great. Okay, now we can launch our third and final question, which I will launch, and this is multiple choice. So great. So the question you see here is, which phrase resonates most with you when advocating for quality jobs? So A is that good jobs build strong communities. B, investing in employees drives business success. C, quality jobs create loyalty and reduce turnover. And D, fair wages and safe workplaces are non-negotiable. So curious about which phrase resonates most.
And there's no wrong answer here. So you're not getting graded on a quiz here.
Few more seconds and then I'll stop to share Michelle results right now. It looks like, hopefully folks can see, 50% of folks said investing in employees drive business success. After that, quality jobs create loyalty and reduce turnover. And then we have good jobs build strong communities. So good mix of language.
Very interesting results.
Pass it back to you, Margie.
Okay, I'm gonna try one more time to see if I can control. Says I should be able to, but I cannot. Oops, wait, maybe I can. Is there? Hold on. Sorry. We're gonna get there. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Margie Waller. I've been introduced with a lengthy, sorry about that, introduction. But what you might have been able to tell from my resume is that while I am working with Topos Partnership as a senior fellow, and Topos works on issues of all kinds, my personal background is that I spent many years working in DC on issues like this, and in fact, did a whole project on how to define good jobs and how to move that issue forward. So I was really excited to work on research that would help us understand how to make the case for quality and good jobs. We were asked, as Sarah said, by SHRM to do this research, almost kind of a follow-up to earlier research we did with the foundation on skills first hiring. And this project, we were asked really to explore how HR professionals and others can be well positioned through a communication strategy to influence organizational policy and thinking about good jobs. And then to identify those effective ways of making the case. And I'll just say a word about what Topos does. Topos is a national strategic communications research organization. And Sarah mentioned that we do framing science research. And framing science research is, if you haven't heard of it before, it might be a little different from other kinds of communications research that you've seen, because we are looking for something that goes deeper than maybe a survey. Although we do some survey work, we usually go a little deeper than that first. And what we're looking for is when someone is trying to communicate toward a particular policy goal, and by policy, that could be, government policy, it can be policy of a certain field of work, of an organization. But if you're trying to achieve a goal like that, and you're finding that you're struggling, we help to identify what some of the ways that people think about an issue, the way that the public and the people you're talking to naturally think about an issue might be tripping you up based on the way that you are communicating with them. And once we have identified some of those barriers, we also try to find what's another way to have this conversation. And what we're looking for there is not so much trying to persuade people with data or anything like that. We're looking for things that people already believe, but they probably aren't their sort of first or natural way of thinking about an issue. So when we start a conversation in a different way, we kind of trigger that way of thinking about the issue in their brain, and it can lead us to a different result in the conversation. So we're tapping into something we call cultural common sense. And what we're looking for when we're doing these, sort of testing of these organizing ideas or framing the conversation, we're looking for something that goes beyond the sort of nodding agreement that you might get in a conversation. So a lot of times people will listen to you, they'll nod along, and then they will walk away with questions in their own mind about what you've just said. And so they haven't really agreed with you. So we're looking for something that goes deeper than that. These little arrows are hard to find, sorry. I'm not going to say a lot about the research approach, but I'm happy to talk more about that if you all have questions about it later. So when we started doing this research, we initially found that there were some things that people already believe and they already think about when we start raising the topic of good jobs, that allow us to build on as we search for a way to frame this conversation. So the first thing is that, and this is wonderful, HR professionals largely already support the concept of quality jobs and good jobs. They know that there's value to their company and to their community. And they're thinking about what that means. We asked you all to put some of those definitions in the beginning of the conversation. That for most people that we interviewed, those characteristics of a quality job align closely with SHRM Foundation's definition, which it has a very kind of holistic approach. And we also found that HR professionals really do understand and emphasize that employee satisfaction is a core justification for offering quality jobs, but they feel that they need more proof or data to show that meeting employees' needs is both ethically right and also beneficial for the organization. In addition, we found, most HR professionals have a basic familiarity with the idea of ROI arguments. So that there's a return on the investment. Some of you mentioned there's cost associated with doing this, but there is a return on investment. Although not everyone is familiar with sort of all of the case making around ROI. And we reviewed the interviews that we did revealed opportunities that we have as a sector to strengthen and expand the case. Things like company reputation, reduction in turnover, improving employee morale, commitment, loyalty, and engagement, and that it removes barriers to allow the kind of a larger, broader candidate pool to consider applying. So reputation, how the company or organization is known in the community can make a difference in who applies. And finally, that while HR professionals don't necessarily see themselves as able to enact this kind of change in focus around quality jobs alone, they do think of themselves as sort of advocates within the company, and many of them believe they are seen as playing that role by leadership as well. So what are some of the challenges we uncovered? There are organizational and cultural constraints. So there is a kind of sense that leadership has a real focus on bottom line thinking, and HR professionals don't feel really equipped to make the full case that might help persuade leadership around those bottom line issues. And they also see some issues of job quality as sort of beyond their own control. So some of you mentioned things like, having a sense that a quality job includes having a sense that the place you're working has opportunities for growth. And things like that sometimes are seen as, beyond the scope of the HR professional and really dependent on a company culture that supports managers and leaders playing that kind of a role and encouraging that kind of company culture. And then additionally, there are some limits to what we might think of as incentives to continue improving quality jobs. There is a sense that doing so takes a lot of personal time, effort, department funding, and social capital, all of which are finite resources in a world where we're all having to do a lot of things in our jobs. And that HR professionals feel kind of pulled between two things. They know that their job is to really do what's best for the company, but they also feel a need and desire to advocate for workers' needs. And sometimes those things can kind of pull you in two different directions. So here is, oops, do we have the video? Yes. These are examples of some of the interviews we did, and I'm just going to show you a few of them if I can start it. I know you folks tested these before I got on. Do you know how to do it?
Olivia is able to share.
I don't know about others, but I don't have sound.
Yeah, we'll check with Olivia on that.
If it's not going to work, we should probably just skip past this.
Yes, because sometimes the audio poses issues. It's the way that you share it. So it's probably best if we yeah, we can't hear the video. So
Okay.
I'm just
Can you
talking.
close that? I'm not sure how to do that. Okay, now I lost the sharing.
Great. And we can share the videos out afterwards.
So we did in the research, we after we identified some of the challenges, we tested a number of ways of talking about these issues. And the goal here that we're looking for is, how can we give a way of communicating about this issue to people like HR professionals and other leaders in a company or in the sector who are already supportive of moving forward with and recognizing that having quality jobs is really good for the company. How do we give them language that does that? So what we identified was this kind of central core frame or an organizing idea of how to talk about it. And that is this, what we call the bumper sticker part of the finding, which is organizational success depends on providing workers as much as possible of what they want and need, and that every change along these lines is an upgrade to the operation or the employer, the workplace as a whole. Olivia, can you move it forward for me? Oh, wait, there we go. Again, we have a video, so we skip past that. So why does this work? If what we found was that putting what employees want and need at the center of the framing enables HR professionals to use an evidence-based argument across the whole breadth of job quality issues, including those that leadership might not be thinking about as part of the usual benefits package. And you don't have to show a specific ROI payoff for a specific change. You just have to show that it is important to employees, which then affects things like hiring, retention, loyalty, and productivity, et cetera, which is all strengthening for the bottom line. Framing these job enhancements as what we're calling an upgrade provides a practical and unified approach that links company goals like quality and profitability with improved worker experiences. So this is a really adaptable framing, because you can shift the focus away from like what you might think of as rigid judgments about what is job quality to something that is more dynamic and allows for a continuous improvement mindset. It doesn't all have to happen at once. So how do you operationalize this? It's helpful, as you might guess, to provide stories and data to help HR professionals make the case that employee satisfaction must be a priority. Boosting the ROI argument to include all aspects of quality jobs. So going beyond the very narrow definitions that leadership might be thinking about. This allows HR professionals to make an ROI case for nearly any job improvement that is seen by employees as a priority. That makes it possible to boost the ROI argument to prioritize investments in broader hiring practices, that broadening of the pool, getting you more applicants in the door. Also, ways that it might encompass company values, things like how workers are treated matter greatly to employees, especially the younger generations, new employees coming in, that influence hiring and retention and rehiring and even client and public relations. And I'll just to say a word about that, it's, it can be all kinds of things. We heard a lot about how much employees value feeling like they are part of a team and that what they're doing is a contribution and that they are valued in the work of that team and of the company. And those are things that really are about, management style and less about making major investments. But it is also about growth and how you structure things within the company to make it possible for people to thrive and grow within the company. And then the last thing is that it even reaches beyond ROI for the specific company. And this is something that at least one of you thought was a good way to make the case, which is that good jobs also mean thriving communities and local economies. So a strong local economy and thriving community exists through improved spending power. You're able to hire more people, you keep them there longer. They then are able to spend money in other small businesses in the community. That improves quality of life and business conditions across the board. And that benefits your own employees and your organization, as well as the larger community. So these are just a couple of examples of messages that work. And you don't have to memorize these or use these specific words, but this is kind of a core idea. So for example, improving job quality improves retention. This saves companies time and money in rehiring and retraining. It also improves workplace stability by creating a better workplace culture, keeping knowledge and experience within the company and creating more continuity between employees and clients. So this is a kind of an expanded way to think about retention and workplace stability, and means that, you can engage in a conversation about the cost benefits of hiring and hiring from a larger pool, having to do it less frequently, the value of retraining. And then a second example is creating fairness and quality jobs by identifying and removing barriers that prevent certain kinds of people from applying is smart business. It increases the talent pool, creates a stronger workforce, and improves reputation. This message kind of shifts to potential and current employee needs, and it allows you to talk about all kinds of things like work hours, like for example, if you find that some employees, when you talk to them, express a need to start a little later because they have caretaker issues that can't start as early as the shift they've been asked to work. Things like making slight changes in those kinds of scheduling issues can really enhance both your own hiring and retention, but also reputation, which leads to better hiring in the future as well. And then creating quality jobs will boost the economy that businesses operate in. So when your workers have more money in their pockets, businesses benefit because consumers have more money to spend in their communities and local stores. So if you think about this as something that is kind of it's a movement that we're all involved in, of making sure that there are quality jobs that allow people to thrive in their job and in their community, then that's going to strengthen your workplace, but also other workplaces. it's possible to draw that clear line between employees having more money or more stability and a better economy that in turn supports a stronger community. And it really focuses particularly on small businesses. I don't have the video to share with you, but I do have one that where there's a baker who talks about the importance of making sure that his employees are thriving, because that way he knows that his employees can go down the street and spend money on at the diner for their lunch, and the diner's employees can spend money in the bakery. And this kind of thing really results in a stronger local economy all around. That's the gist of it. So I'm going to stop there and turn it. I think we have a few questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Margie and Sarah. We really appreciate your expertise and the report, the presentation of the report. That is such a wealth of information for our audience and for those who will get to see the replay as well. I do have some targeted questions that I wanted to ask you to make sure that we cover. And so this question is for Margie. This report is comprehensive body of work. It's a comprehensive body of work. What was the most surprising thing that came out in the research to you?
I think it was the thing I touched on briefly in the presentation, which was how frequently we heard talking to both employees as well as the HR professionals about what they were hearing or even what they experienced in their own careers, which was the importance of having leadership and management that recognized the value of each employee and would share with them what they were contributing to the overall goals of the company and the team, and really feeling like you are part of something that is contributing in some way and that you're part of a necessary and important part of that. That's also kind of can lead to things like the important things of like thinking through what your career will look like within this company and how you move up within the company. But it was surprising to us how often we heard that kind of feedback, that something that really can change with company culture without a lot of cost.
Yes. Yes, I'm really glad that you highlighted that, because that's something that we want our initiative to bring out to employers, that it doesn't take a lot to change the culture of the workplace. And second question to you, Margie. So your research highlights the importance of framing job quality improvements as business upgrades. How can small and medium-sized businesses use this upgrade framing to better connect job quality improvements to their bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, every company's different, right? And small businesses can vary widely. So I think it really means thinking first about, like, honestly, just talking to your employees, right? Talking to your employees about what they're experiencing and understanding more about what they think about in terms of, what would make their job experience better, what would make them want to stay with the company longer. And then thinking about how you implement, even if it's incremental, or over a long period of time, but you have a strategy that you're communicating back to your employees, and that kind of strategy really translates to retention and productivity, and ultimately to the bottom line.
Thank you. And I'm going to pose this question to Sarah. Uh, we know HR professionals often feel they lack the data or language to fully make the case for quality jobs. What practical types of evidence, like metrics or storytelling, would you recommend that small and medium-sized business owners or workforce partners gather to track and communicate the impact of job quality improvements to those who can make that change?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it links really well to some of the recommendations that Margie shared out in the report, which is, um, I think to make the case for quality jobs, there's some easy low lift things that can hopefully be recorded or tracked, right? When we think of retention, employee engagement, productivity, And then from the financial perspective, perhaps looking at savings in terms of lower turnover, fewer sick days used, other benefits to really just highlight the financial impact of engaging quality jobs. But I think the key point here is both numbers and human stories are a really powerful combination, right? And I think it provides a full picture of how quality job improvements really affect the business and the employee. So being able to find success stories within a company, a champion using that narrative, and then taking some time. I think we hear about this all the time, which is that it's often easy to share best practice, but then the impact tracking is where folks drop off, right? So being really diligent with some of those low lift action items. And I think it just connects more broadly to the movement building piece here, right? So it's important to remember that no one HR professional can be solely responsible for transforming a company. It really does require building a broader movement, which again, we're hoping to do through our work at SHRM Foundation, through Thriving Together, to really shift the conversation around quality jobs, getting more buy-in from folks from bottom up and top down. And again, excited to share more about a few resources we have coming out in the upcoming months.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm just going to check in with Olivia to see if we have any questions, because we want to make sure that we leave time for the audience to ask any questions that they may have. And there are no audience questions as yet. But would you like to pose some questions to the audience, or we can ask our last optional question?
I'm happy to pose. I know we've got some folks and would be excited to learn a bit more, just especially given the poll and then some of the recommendations Margie shared. So I guess let me just pull up the first question is very general, just what recommendations on the messaging resonated with folks and just what didn't. So I can drop that question into the chat as well and see if folks are able to respond to that. So
Yeah.
just thoughts and
And
reactions.
so, yeah, and so what I can do is I can ask my last question while they're answering that question. And this last question is to Sarah. So, community practices were noted as important for sustaining momentum in job quality improvements. How can business owners or workforce development organizations leverage that peer learning or their networks to make adopting job quality practices better?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think at SHRM, we kind of found the same case when we spoke to our employer network, right? So we spoke to a variety of employers and really asked them, what do you need most to drive change? And a lot of them said the same three things, right? Skills, resources, and community. And of course, language is within that. So I think the Good Jobs Collaborative, it's an awesome prototype for a collaborative peer learning space. And I've also seen mentorship programs work very well in which an early stage business is partnered or paired with that of a similar context, and folks are able to share best practices and learning. So I think just building the human to human champion, finding relational connections and going from there. And I think my quick plug here is would love for you all to stay involved with SHRM. Follow us on LinkedIn and social media because we're building out a lot of upcoming work around this quality jobs piece. So we'll be publishing the report that Margie has shared out towards the end of June. And along with that, we're developing a quality jobs resource hub. So we'll be bringing folks in to consolidate all of the tried and tested resources out in the field onto our webpage, again, just to drive folks into a shared space of best practices and key players and just continue to nudge thinking there. And hopefully later in the year, we'll be convening some more folks around just conversations on resources used and then continuing to just check in on barriers and how messaging's sat. So would love to share that out once it's published next month.
Thank you. And we do have some questions from the audience. What are some types, and this is from Darlisa, what are some good types of trainings, books do you recommend for maintaining good company morale?
That's a great question. I might have to pull from my list and share it after this call. I think um, I'm thinking about SHRM. There's a handful of podcasts, Honest HR. I think what I lean to is looking for leaders that show courageous leadership. So I'm thinking of the conversation of, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and as well as how quality jobs fits into this vision of thriving together. I think of being able to reference champion companies or leaders or employers who are really not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, and are able to really show that vulnerability. So I'm happy to, I'll pull a couple out and share that after. But I don't know if Margie, if you have any podcasts or books or trainings that you have been listening to that have been inspirational.
I was just thinking about, I don't know if others have heard of, there's a couple of small businesses that I know of that have done some amazing leadership work, talking about the importance of these issues. And I do have some videos somewhere. I'll see if I can find them and shoot them over so that we can share them back out. But one is Katzinger's, which is a deli, and another is St. Francis a Pizza in Ohio. And then oh, I'm not going to remember the name. There's a small business restaurant owner in Seattle who's done given amazing talks about, the importance of thinking about your own company's impact on the larger community and how you treat your employees as part of that. So I think, in terms of what Sarah was just saying about the importance of leadership and, having people who can kind of help be a cheerleader for this movement, I think there are some good examples out there.
Thank you so much. And for Margie, you mentioned that younger workers are more focused on job quality than other generations. Are there any job quality expectations that are unique to younger workers?
I really think what we heard was that sense of people, younger people really want to their work to feel like it is meaningful. And so they want to feel like they're contributing something that is sort of bigger than themselves and bigger than a paycheck. And so that seemed to be something a little bit different in the upcoming generations that we don't always hear from others. I'm not saying it's exclusively that way, but we heard it so much, it was hard to ignore.
I'll quickly jump in to say just some similar research within SHRM is a trend we're noticing with the younger population is that they are way more open and comfortable with perhaps sharing personal diagnoses or just kind of like mental health concerns. And it's interesting because historically, I think older generations were not always comfortable sharing as much of their personal space. So I think HR is in an interesting position to navigate that, right, in terms of like compliance and accommodation, and of course, ensuring that all employees feel like they are bringing their best self to work and that they can operate and thrive. But I think it's also just important to just quickly call out there's parts that are appropriate to bring to work and then other parts that aren't, right? So I think it's important for us to just think about, even with quality jobs, how we define that, what conditions we create where folks can bring their best self, right? And articulate those needs.
And I saw that we had some hearts from the audience, so it's resonating. And I wanted to share that Darlisa stated her answers to the question is what resonated most was what others see as top qualities for having a quality job. It really shows that people value things differently, so it is important to have all components in a workplace. And I definitely agree with that. When you're talking about a quality job, there's these intersecting components that must come together for it to be really considered a quality job. And I'm assuming that that's what, she's saying. And I definitely agree with that.
I would just
And,
add,
sorry, Margie.
I would just add to that I think it shows the opportunity that you have just to start talking with employees about how they view things, because you can find some surprising things that might be doable in your workplace.
And that's definitely what we want people to get out of this is that it doesn't, as you stated, Marty, it doesn't have to begin with cost, right? There are very simple things that you can do to make the workplace better for everyone. And as we are, winding down, I want to bring Olivia back in. And I know that Sarah has something she wants to share out too, and I'll just let Olivia facilitate that.
Yeah,
So
I
much.
think as we're heading into next steps, we definitely want to hear from Sarah first. I invite Sarah and Margie to stay on screen and on camera for the remainder of the webinar so that people can get your name and your organization. Just a quick plug, this is a great opportunity to open up LinkedIn and connect with both Margie and Sarah. But yeah, Sarah, I'm really excited to hear about your announcements.
Yeah, thank you so much for just the invitation again. I think SHRM Foundation is really excited to be partnering with Topos to just produce this research coverage. So we'll share this information out afterwards. But just two things to look out for is that the report should be published and live, hopefully towards the end of June, early July. So again, that will contain the recommendations Margie shared in detail. And the second thing is we would love to just invite you to utilize our Quality Jobs Resource Hub, which is also coming out in about a month. So I'll have both of those things with the team to share out. And just thank you again for inviting us into this conversation.
Absolutely. Prosperity Now, we're really happy to host you all. We're so happy that you joined us to bring this level of expertise and just like such a depth of knowledge of what's going on in the world of high job quality. And so thank you everyone today for joining us, and for those of you that are going to catch this on YouTube. Our next steps is we want you to visit our website, of course, to stay up to date here at Prosperity Now. Once you finish today's webinar, a survey will pop up, and we would love for you to complete that and just give us additional suggestions. Let us know what you thought about today's call, and if you want more of the same, because we would love to continue this conversation around this wonderful initiative. And also sign up for one of our networks if you aren't already signed up. We would love to have you along for the ride as we continue to learn together here at Prosperity Now across the community. But again, thank you all to everyone who joined. Thank you, Margie and Sarah, for joining us today as today's featured experts. And of course, Karine, Joelle, huge major shout out to you all for pulling this all together. I think we definitely learned so much alongside each other today, and I definitely had my notes on fire throughout today's conversation. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.